It's just insanity, Marxism, Leninism at its finest, disguised as simple liberalism. Liberals, of course, claiming that they're not socialists, even though their most popular candidate was Bernie Sanders. And they rigged the election by allowing delegates to be counted as basically given to the runner of the running candidate. I mean, special delegates that are basically appointed by the DNC in so many states that it just guaranteed Hillary winning primaries. It's a totally rigged party system. Remember, political parties in this country don't have to be mandated by law. They've got election laws in this country, but when it comes to party politics and the rules on how they elect themselves to their convention, that's all a private matter. I want you to understand that. Donald Trump got a lead when there was a lot of candidates because independents and Democrats can vote in some of these Republican primaries. These are party rules. There are also districts in the United States where the more moderate candidate in these districts actually get more delegates in particular states. I'm going to have a show one day just to break down the ridiculous duplicity of many of the party rules within Republican and Democratic parties that make an outsider hard to pull it off. But if you're moderate and you come across as a moderate, you can actually get more delegates in congressional districts, literally in election districts, than if you were from a conservative district in a particular state. So for one state, this is how the Romneys and the McCains win our elections, and the Bob Doles, and then lose the general. And all that used to just be paradigm until the Trump train. And I sound enthusiastic about Trump all the time because he's shaken the almond tree like no one has ever shaken the almond tree before. I believe it's something that comes raining down on us like almonds, like cherry trees or, just fruit trees, nut trees. They come raining down because he's shaking it. Other people believe it's, he's just, draining the swamp, like he's coming on in his airboat, he's in the swamp knee deep in this muck full of politicians, which quite frankly, you can use that analogy too. I don't mind. I really don't. I don't mind. As long as the Democrats end up as a party of slaves with just a bunch of, workers screaming and shouting, absolutely having no real contribution to society other than attending rallies where they're bought and paid for at Charlottesville. Now tonight they go to Phoenix. I mean, these are paid mobs. And you on the left, with your media, you're trying to sell American people that this is like an organic frustration expressing itself against Trump, never Trumpers. These are phenomenons that are paid for and funded by statists, corporatists, globalists, funded by the giant. I'm talking about huge progressive virus society. Go to progressivevirus.com and you'll see what I am trying to get in the Urban Dictionary. A progressive virus is a statist liberal mind filled with unanswerable grievances that are then sold to their children, literally advocating having pent-up anger and describing a fix in a system that keeps them down no matter how many hours they work. And I don't claim that they don't work. I'm claiming that they do work, but they never get ahead. They'll never tell their kids the mistakes they've made and why they didn't get ahead, the skills they didn't acquire when they were younger, the job that the loyalty they expressed to a company only to be laid off. These are unanswered grievances that occur simply because of a tax system and a regulatory system in the United States that makes businesses flee the United States and go manufacture elsewhere. There was a time where a simple union job at Ford Motor Company, you can own, 2,500 square foot single family home and put your kids in college. But guess what? The tax system, as was described by Paul Ryan last night in his town hall on CNN, he said a lot of the things that I've been saying for quite some time. He's got it pretty much in his head, but at the same time, he's a rhino. He's trying to navigate in the middle, trying to navigate in the mainstream, trying to sound polished and cured, when the system he's working for is unpolished and completely no cure. Think about that. You want to sound logical. You want to sound even-keeled. You want to be able to say this and that about your government, but you know it's a plague. That the minute you get elected, you go into Washington and realize, oh, I represent the government, not the people. It's got to make sense. They'll say it's budget neutral. That's the best one. The CBO says, who is the CBO? Since when are they nonpartisan? How many times did they tell you the Obamacare was budget neutral? Come on. Then they'll say, no, we were wrong. It's actually going to cost the American economy 20, 30 billion. And then, oh, no, only 8 billion. And then back and forth, because they're human. So why do we have a CBO? So we can rely on it as an excuse for liberals to say, oh, we don't want something? Or for the Republicans to say, oh, the CBO says it's a great idea. Well, we have no ideas. Why is it that the CBO should be the standard bearer of what is a good idea, what is good policy? When we're a broke nation, really in debt, that happens to have the only currency that the whole world depends on and funds, the malarkey that we see in Europe, who sells treasury bonds to the American people. And the American people, instead of investing in our companies, are buying treasury bills because they're so scared of the stock market, even when it's at 22,000 and rising. But remember, as a fast meteor, I can't even pronounce it, my God. This is the problem of being a hoarse-voiced person. You know what I'm trying to say. As fast as it's rising, it could crash, it could fall. Usually great depressions, great recessions happen after huge mediocre, I'm not going to try anymore, rises. Same damn thing's going to happen again. Don't know when, but what do people do in these instances? They buy treasury bills at terrible percentages on the security in God we trust and the security of the American dollars. It's ridiculous. And in the end, we are guilty, conservatives are guilty, of zero creativity. We haven't come up with a good idea for this country since the turn of the century. The last good idea that a Republican can claim credit for, we can't. Unless you want to take credit for Theodore Roosevelt's idea to complete and buy the rights to the Panama Canal. Think about the last great idea. Oh, I just came up with one. I forgot. The Highway Administration. Dwight D. Eisenhower, who by today's standards is very liberal. Some people say that Reagan is very liberal by today's standards. Well, when you have a society that can't even define what conservatism is anymore, you're in big trouble. Because we already know, what liberalism is. And it's profound, embedded in our societies. At every step of the way, you'll find a liberal fingerprint. You'll find a liberal pointing at you saying, you're this, you're that. Perfect example of that is Secretary of Treasury's Mnuchin's wife coming down, and since she's supposed to represent the people as her husband does and public servants, she can't have fancy clothes on because the MP's just, she's supposed to feel bad for marrying a wealthy guy and having snazzy clothes. Well, they hammer you so hard that you lose sight of what you're doing. And she talked back as any human being would and forgets the fact that she is the Secretary of Treasury's wife, and she shouldn't allow herself to fall into that liberal rat trap of envy, criticizing her beautiful clothing and looking marvelous, making America look great again. What is wrong with greatness? What is wrong with lower class people, working class people, middle class people, any class of person who can't afford those clothing? What's wrong with having an expression of what could be something for you to strive for if you're fashion conscious? What's wrong with having your children and yourself look at a beautiful young lady coming down from a plane with a fancy purse on? What could that possibly do to you, other than maybe strive to have that purse, to afford that purse, or dream of never having that purse. But why get so angry? Why allow your media to sell that envy to you? And why should you be pissed off? What's wrong? Are you pissed off that she's living better than you are? I mean, what is she supposed to do? Live lesser? She shouldn't rub it in your face? Should she wear a Walmart button on her blouse? I mean, think about what drives the left to spew that kind of envy, social envy among each other. And then you guys buy into it because I can see what you're saying on the blogs. I can hear your comments. It's the most ridiculous kind of stuff. And no matter how much logic me and others are expressing by facts of history, links, then you dispute the links, you dispute the sources. You actually grab the fake news dogma that Trump has articulated perfectly. The only thing he's ever articulated perfectly is by saying two words: fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news. Fake news. Shut up, fake news. No questions, fake news. And he's putting doubt in the stuff that we receive over the internet while bankrupting print media in the process. I mean, it's like the nail in the coffin. If I'm wrong, we lose majorities in the midterm elections, in the House. And we'll never get to the 60 senators. I believe I'm right. And believe me, sometimes I'd rather be happy than be right. I just see communism from miles away because of my American-Cuban upbringing and my Cuban-American parents. I know for a fact, and you can't deny this, if you're liberal, you know why you vote for Democrats. You know why you're liberal. And you can't stand the harsh reality that in one way or another, you want to steal. Because every time you ask for the government to expand and to do something it should not do, that is not relatable in writing in the Constitution, it's not relatable under the premise of states' rights and federalism, you're stealing because you're asking the government to misspend other people's money. And since only 20% of this population actually pays the taxes for the entire group of American citizens that are growing up more and more poor, more and more paycheck to paycheck, more and more in credit card debt, more and more unfulfilled with unanswered grievances, you can imagine the list just grows.